Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Battle of the Apps. To kick us off, I just have a quick trailer to play for us. All right, that's just a little foretaste of how great this is going to be. I'm really grateful, and we are all very grateful to all of you for coming to watch. Every year when we do this, I think that it's the best year yet. And this year, I really do think it is the best year yet. I'm so impressed with the projects that the students have done. They came up with fantastic ideas. They did a lot of painstaking research work, and they turned all of that into these cool, convenient, really usable tools to help people get important legal information. They've been working like crazy on their presentations, and the hard work has been a really good investment, and you are all in for a treat. It's disappointing that we can't be together in person this time. We were hoping. Last year, of course, was all Zoom as well. And then this year we had floods and mudslides, and that kind of steered us towards a plan B. But fortunately, Plan B has actually worked great. The students have been very adaptive and resilient and prepared fantastic Zoom presentations. We are extremely fortunate to have with us our panel of superstar judges, Sarah Sutherland, who is the brand new CEO of Canley, Tom Spraggs, the relentlessly innovative owner of Spraggs Law, Lawrence Alexander, who does far too many things to even begin to describe, but one of his most recent initiatives among so many is the Better Justice Lab. And for the first time this year, we have a new judge, the wonderful Caroline Nevin of Courthouse Libraries, who's been so supportive of this. We had hoped to have Corinne Zimmerman as well as a returning judge, but unfortunately she couldn't make it, but we are in very good hands. I'm really grateful to everyone who makes this work, especially the students, and also Kara Karplak, who you'll see here, our amazing events planner, who's pretty much part of our class at this point. To Neota Logic, thank you so much for giving us the power to turn these ideas into real things. And Kevin Mulcahy, who's really gone above and beyond to take the students' work to the next level. And to my dean, Dalianne Millard, who has put her full support behind innovation at TRU Law and this project. And she will now say a few words to welcome you.
Thanks so much, Katie. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Battle of the Apps. I think this is my absolute favorite event for the fall term, and I'm really glad that I've been invited to this event. You know, I was born BC, which stands for before computers, and I'm simply in awe of all the work that's being done in this to try and marry information technology with law. Specifically to ensure better access to justice and better outcomes for clients. I want to thank our brilliant lecturer, Katie Sykes, for all the creative energy and all the wonderful things that she does with this course. I've had the privilege of teaching tort law with Katie, and time again, I'm struck by her brilliance and the fresh ideas that she brings to legal education. It's really, really special, and I appreciate it. I want to say thank you for Neota for allowing us to use the software, and also from my side, just thank you for our judges. You know, we do know that it's a Friday evening. It's been a long week for most of us, and we don't take it for granted that you are here, and we're really looking forward when the time comes to reward you with dinner, hopefully with our students and with you, with all of you. To the students, best of luck for tonight. You've worked very hard and I'm really looking forward to see you showcase your designs. As far as I'm concerned, you're all winners. So really, fingers crossed. I'm going to place my bets on the best team and may the best team win. That's all from me. I'm now going to hand back to Katie.
Okay, and the first group is going to present the GLADU sentencing assistant.
Yes. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And Nick will be taking over.
All right, Nick, just tell me when you're ready.
Okay, yep, Darnell.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Today, we are presenting an app that tackles the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in the justice system. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded to Kamloops Secwepemc territory. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Darnell Tailfeathers.
I'm Nick.
I'm Zach.
I'm Sean.
I'm Hasleen. I'll be starting the presentation off with the introduction, and then I'll be passing it on to Darnell to talk about the legal background, and then we'll go into app development, and then we'll be exploring the app after that, and finally we'll take questions. Our app essentially creates a draft based on user inputs that lists the GLADU factors and case law that are relevant to a defense counsel's client. The defense counsel can then use that information to help draft their submissions at either the bail or sentencing stages of a criminal trial. Now I'll pass it off to Darnell.
Thank you, Hasleen. It's almost 2022, and there is still an overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in the Canadian prisons. In the 1980s, Indigenous peoples accounted for 10% of inmates in the federal prisons, despite making up just only 2% of the total population. These numbers have only grown. In 2019, Indigenous peoples made up 31% of the admissions of provincial prisons and 29% of admissions federally. So the courts look to address this issue, right, Sean?
That's right, Darnell. In 1999, the case of R.V. GLADU set the requirement that the courts must take into consideration the unique background factors of Indigenous peoples when sentencing an Indigenous person. These factors, known as GLADU factors, speak to the many different aspects that may have led to someone committing an offense. They can be applied at either the sentencing or bail stages of a trial, with the intention of lessening a person's sentence or directing the court to pursue a more restorative option altogether. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Sean. Most of the time, GLADU reports GLADU factors are applied through a GLADU report. These reports are comprehensive in nature, and they outline an individual's life story and are written by qualified GLADU report writers. They highlight how the individual has been affected by circumstances beyond their control, such as colonialism, addiction, violence, racism, or poverty. But I'll let Zach explain further.
Thanks, Nick. So I know that the system doesn't entirely work. Because GLADU reports are incredibly thorough, they can take years to write, time which offenders facing lesser sentences may prefer to spend serving and completing their sentence. This means that defense lawyers often do not rely on GLADU reports, and sometimes not even on the factors when making their sentencing submissions. In their view, it is better to have a client serve a 3-month sentence than to have to wait 2 years for a GLADU report to be obtained and potentially lower that client's sentence. Moreover, we have heard from lawyers and GLADU report writers that legal aid lawyers simply do not have the time or resources to invest into obtaining GLADU reports or into citing GLADU factors during a client's bail or sentencing submissions. So our app is good because it significantly cuts the time needed for lawyers to create a report and reduces the amount of resources needed by creating a customizable report with a couple clicks of a button. And now I'm going to let Hasleen explain how we intend to rectify the issues we've gone over with our app.
Thanks, Zach. We believe that this failure to use GLADU factors and GLADU reports is a significant access to justice problem that needs to be addressed in Canada. The GLADU Submissions Assistant aims to tackle one aspect of this problem. It focuses on four main components: determining eligibility, community factors, GLADU factors, and draft generation. The assistant provides lawyers with a draft of their client's specific GLADU factors and the relevant case law that they can then rely on for their sentencing or bail submissions. So Darnell, how did you come up with this idea for the app?
Thank you, Hasleen. Growing up on the Blood Reserve in Southern Alberta, you see issues from a different perspective, a different lens. The effects of colonialism is very visible in my community. Poverty, unemployment, addictions, domestic violence, homelessness. Even members experience racism from non-Indigenous communities, from surrounding communities. So this all wrapped up, it really guided me and motivated me to try to tackle this issue, understanding it from a different lens. So, and also, my father was also a correctional officer for over 25 years at the Kainai Correction Center, which was located on the reserve. So understanding these complex issues is what motivated me to pursue this app idea. And furthermore, the medicine wheel, we chosen this logo because we feel that it represents what the GLADU factors are trying to accomplish. We believe that with the philosophy of mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and spiritually, I believe that those are basically the common goals that GLADU factors are trying to accomplish for an individual that's been in the system. So we believe that this perfectly represents our app's idea and the direction that we want to go with it. But now I'll pass it on to Sean.
Thank you for sharing, Darnell. Now I'd like to show you how we hope to take Darnell's idea and turn it into a functional app. As you can see on this timeline, our first concept focused on connecting with a GLADU writer in an easy and accessible manner, as we knew writers were a limited resource. We started down this path, but we were always open to changing things if it became obvious a pivot was needed. During the initial construction, we spoke to a Kamloops criminal lawyer to see if we were on the right track. While he thought we had the basis of a good idea, he suggested there might be better ways to accomplish our goals, such as an app that essentially assembled a GLADU report quickly and easily. Now I'll let Zach discuss the later stages of this journey.
Absolutely, Sean. So after we spoke to the lawyer, we decided to chat with a real GLADU writer in an effort to gain insight into the process of creating a report and to find out what needed to improve. The writer highlighted that we need to pivot to a focus in individualizing the factors for reports in an efficient and streamlined way for lawyers. This realization led us to developing an app that assists lawyers by generating a report that connects the community, individual, and family factors for Indigenous clients in a comprehensive form that can be used for both bail and sentencing submissions. So now that we know a little bit about the background of the app, I'm going to pass it over to Nick to show you how the actual app works itself.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. So now let's look inside. So here's our app. Before we kind of take a closer look here, I just want to go over briefly some of the considerations that went into our application. So from the start, you'll notice that all of the contents of our application are contained within this white box in the center of the screen. And that was an intentional design choice on our part for our app, because we recognize that the primary users of this app, primary audience of this app, will likely be legal aid lawyers that are trying to juggle various tasks at once and are really pressed for time. So it was our hope that by centering all of the content in our app right in the center of the screen, we could really sort of capture their attention during extremely busy and stressful times. The second consideration that I'd like you to take note of is the background of our app. So you'll see here that it features a misty forest, and we hoped that this would present users with a sense of calming that might help them to cope with some of the potentially traumatic content of our application that will be displayed. So as you can see here, though, this first page is simply a welcome screen that tells the user what the application does and how it can help them. So we're just going to go ahead and click start here. And so the second screen that we arrive at is a disclaimer. And you'll notice that the language that is used in our disclaimer is relatively simple. And again, this was an intentional point on our part because we really wanted to try and avoid overly complicated and sophisticated and in many ways unnecessary legal jargon that might make it difficult for the average user to understand our app. And this is kind of an idea that we've incorporated throughout our app as well. We're really trying to use plain language here. So I'm just going to click accept here. We're going to proceed to the next screen. And so this is the eligibility stage of our app. The only factor that needs to be considered as to whether a client can have GLADU factors applied during their sentencing or bail is whether that client is considered Indigenous. And by that, what we mean is that the client has to self-identify as Indigenous. And this is a principle that we're aware that not all lawyers might be aware of, and so that's why we've included it under the question here. And it presents us with two options. So if we were to select no here, our application actually will take the user to sort of an ending screen here that prevents them from proceeding any further because at that point, it's recognized that the application is no longer relevant to that user's client. So we're just going to click back here. And we're going to click yes now. And this will take us to the next portion of our app, which goes over the community factors, but I'm going to let Zach talk about those.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So we know that community has been recognized as a major influence for determining an individual's behavior throughout their life. So we wanted to include specific community factors that could connect each individual to their own experience with their band in BC. This step of the app achieves this goal by allowing the lawyer to select their client's corresponding band government based on area. You can see that after you select the band government, you're prompted to then select a specific band that falls within it, which allows for further individualization based on unique community history. The selection will result in an addition to the final report in the form, in the form of unique written aspects that correspond to the selected band, such as culture, community difficulties, and important legal developments. And now I'm going to throw it to Sean to talk to you guys about how we intend to build this feature out.
Cheers, Zach. So it became clear as we developed the app that the community factors might be the most important feature of our application. This was based on our own research and the feedback we received throughout the development process. As you can see on this screen, our app already offers users many local BC options, and this was despite the time constraints we faced in development and the difficulty of finding this regional information. The GLADU Submissions Assistant now streamlines this time-consuming process, providing community factors that legal counsel could use easily and effectively. It is our hope to build out the community factors in a separate project to eventually offer the user a database that expands the whole country. This is a huge amount of work, and we want to make sure it gets done right. Back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Sean. So the next screen that we're going to proceed to is a trauma warning message. And this message was created after our talk with Mitch Walker, the GLADU report writer. And he really informed us that careful attention needed to be drawn to the sensitive and potentially trauma-inducing nature of the GLADU factors within our app. And so this message really serves as a reminder to users to approach these questions, these GLADU factors, from a place of compassion, empathy, and understanding, but also emphasizes the need to maintain self-awareness of one's own trauma and practice healthy boundaries when dealing with the trauma of others. And these were also ideas that we kind of incorporated into our app after we consulted with Myrna McCallum, a Métis lawyer who's renowned for her work as the host of the Trauma Informed Lawyer podcast, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And we also, at the end of our app, once we sort of get to that draft generation, will present the user with additional trauma resources that they can then rely on if necessary. So if we click I understand here, we then are prompted to the first set of GLADU factors. And this screen has actually changed significantly throughout our development process. Initially, we had decided to display sort of all of the GLADU factors as individual questions across many screens. And we quickly realized through feedback and testing that doing so amounted to a rather sort of clunky and inefficient user experience. So we since decided to group the GLADU factors into two categories. The first being GLADU factors that are more commonly likely to arise in court. And then the second being those GLADU factors that are less common, but still could be relevant to lawyers and their clients in specific circumstances. So if we just click on a few of these options here, you'll see that sort of depending on our depending on our selections, we'll actually be presented with additional follow-up questions that will then further sort of individualize the final draft that is generated. And this question here actually allows the user to either proceed to that final draft without considering those additional factors or with considering those additional factors, depending on whether they are relevant to them. And we sort of decided to structure it like this because we wanted to give our users the flexibility to either use as much or as little of the application as they so had the time to deal with. So we're just going to, for the purposes of the demonstration here, click yes. And then we're going to say to this question that a family member was impacted by the residential school system. And we're going to say that our client was not diagnosed with any mental health condition. And we're just going to click next. And then the next screen here presents those secondary sort of less common GLADU factors that may apply. So we'll select a few here. And then we'll just click next. And so this is the final screen of our application. And this is essentially the crux of our application, the draft that is generated based on our responses throughout the app. And so you'll see lawyers have the option to download this draft that is produced as a Word document so that they can make additional alterations or modifications if necessary. And then the report essentially comprises of two aspects here. So you have the option to view the full report if you click this link, and then you also have the option to view the trauma resources, which we're going to look at first in this demonstration. And if you look at this link here, we've included trauma resources that are relevant to both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples alike. So we have the First Nations Health Authority in there, the Crisis Line Association of BC, and the Trauma Informed Lawyer podcast hosted by Myrna McCallum. And that is an aspect that we will continue to update and add more resources to. And then we'll just open up the report here. So you'll notice that our report is organized in sort of three parts. We have this some general points here that the lawyer may want to rely on when making either their sentencing or bail submissions. And I should say that you'll see throughout this draft generation, we actually provide the relevant case law for the lawyer as hyperlinks, and they will take the lawyer directly to the CanLII resource for that particular case when clicked on. So if we just click on it here, you'll see now we're at RV GLADU. And then the lawyer can, read through the case, cross-reference our citations if necessary, or yeah. So after the general points, we have the community factors that are listed, and you'll see here, again, right, we chose the Kamloops band within the Squamish Nation. So that is listed right there. And within each set of the community factors, we have outlined an important case, the culture, as well as some of the difficulties that may be relevant to that particular community. And then the final aspect of our application are the GLADU factors themselves. And again, these GLADU factors will change sort of depending upon the user's responses, especially to those follow-up questions. So that's our application. I'm going to briefly take you behind the scenes and actually show how our application works in Neota, which was the software that we used to develop it. So this is sort of how our application works here in Neota, and it's quite simple, and we wanted it to be so just in case we are no longer able to develop it, that future developers would be able to pick it up right away. So our app really works with sort of a series of if-then statements. It uses if-then logic. And so you'll see, like in this example here, you know, we have the common GLADU factors here, and you get to that screen after just clicking through from the trauma warning screen. And then once you're at the common GLADU factors, depending on your selection, if you answer no, you'll be taken just straight away to that final report. Whereas if you answer yes, you'll be taken to the secondary, less common set of GLADU factors, and then we'll proceed to the final report. And now I'm just going to show you the other sort of main aspect of how our application works, and that's how the final draft works. So our final draft works in very much the same way, just through a series of sort of if-then statements. So you can see here that if the Chislada Carrier Nation is selected, for instance, then all of this text will be displayed. Conversely, if the Stolo Nation is selected here, then all of this text will be displayed. So that's our app. I'm going to hand it over to Darnell now to give some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Nick. Before we take questions, we would just like to make a few closing remarks. We have produced an application that we believe has the potential to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples and further access to justice. I just wanted to share, before law school, I also had the opportunity to work at the Kainai Correctional Center on my home reserve. And one particularly individual sticks out to me. I won't mention his name because he was a client at the time when he was serving his sentence. But during that time, he shared with me what he wanted to follow through with his plan, after, like, basically post-sentencing. And he was just knowledgeable in the land. He was a Cree from Saskatchewan. So, kind of hostile in Blackfoot territory. There's a history between that. So, but yeah, he was serving his sentence out in our home reserve. And he shared with me what he wanted to do post. And, it's a very high statistic that a lot of Indigenous offenders reoffend and, go back through the system again. But this guy, he added me on Facebook after he got out. And yeah, he just posts, he's a renowned hunter now, and he just lives off the land. And yeah, I envy his knowledge of the land. He's just a very knowledge keeper. So for me to bond with that guy at the time, I feel like it comes full circle now. I understand the pre-sentencing, sentencing, and post-sentencing. So thanks to that individual, he's really motivated me to pursue this app idea as well. So thank you.
I believe, judges, you can ask the group questions now if you would like to.
Wow. Hey, well, I'll go first. Great. Congratulations. That compelling and practical is a way I'd sum it up. I want to especially call out how thoughtful you were in terms of the design and the language. I love how you use these kind of friendly segues in your presentation. I find that really engaging. I loved hearing about your core motivations, especially yours, Darnell. And I really admired how you sought out valuable perspectives that maybe aren't all that obvious to begin with. My question is, and I've got a couple questions, but I'm only going to take up one. Did you, in the course of your deliberations, did you ever reach out to the First Nations Justice Council? Because as you probably know, they have a provincial mandate from the Attorney General to establish a GLADU services entity, right? That would provide all these services, including the reports. And this is a group that's very interested in technology and setting up Indigenous justice centers, even remote ones. So really curious about what the fit might be there, because I see lots of potential.
Nick, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I believe we actually did reach out to the First Nations Justice Council, if I recall, and that was actually how we got connected to Mitch Walker, the GLADU report writer. He was a GLADU report writer that was working in the First Nations Justice Council, if I recall. And one of the things that he sort of told us initially, with sort of our initial idea of using this app to sort of connect individuals with GLADU report writers, he basically said, it's a great idea, but it already exists. And it's something that the First Nations Justice Council had already done at the time. They already sort of had this software fully developed that essentially amounted to the same goal. So yeah, we did reach out, I believe.
Caroline, you want to go ahead?
Can I thank you? First of all, I acknowledge and appreciate with deep humility the land that I'm on as an immigrant and a settler here, and I am always grateful for any chance that I get to have any insight into how the justice system could do better. And I'm impressed with the vision of this. Like it's almost like, like there was a GLADU submission society for a while, and it still exists, I believe, as a nonprofit of a number of people who have figured out how to do these, but they're incredibly time consuming and they're incredibly intense. So it's not something that I would have leapt to, that an app could actually be a bridge somehow in this between perfect and better than nothing, right? And I think that the app will be better than nothing. I think because you've got a sense of how you could refine it. I think that that's really optimistic to see. My one question was, I admire all the work that went into the local areas and then the concept of the history behind it and the educating the judges essentially on where this person, what the circumstances of this person might have been. I did wonder, and Darnell, I wondered if you could tell me specifically, did you think that the question that got you to the community part really got to, did they grow up there or were they just impacted by it, or were their families from? Because I'll tell you, my worry would be that if it's overused, but the person didn't ever really grow up there, does the judiciary somehow discount it if it's not, if there isn't an extra little stage there about how do I relate to that community, or how did my upbringing relate to that community? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, this goes back to the case of RV Gladue. Essentially, she was a Métis woman, I believe, and she was when she committed, went through her sentencing process or whatever. She wasn't living in the community, so that's what essentially they used, is that she didn't have a connection to the community, but that doesn't mean that she's a part of a community. So we just went off I guess the principles from the case and where it stems now. So yeah, that's eventually we kind of had that question in our minds too. If someone, we particularly just stayed in the province of BC because if we had the time and resources, we'd love to go in all of Canada, but just for now, yeah, we had that question. If someone was in Vancouver, but they had a community in the northern part, but they had never grew up there, how come? So yeah, it's all in the case of RV Gladue. So in a sense,
Okay.
we just followed the principle to that.
Can I add just one thing as
And
well?
I think there's probably, yeah, sorry. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. Just, in the sort of journey from the first iteration to what we ended up with, like the sources we've consulted with have really hammered home that community factors is something that's missing. So yeah, I mean, there is the chance in practice that maybe it doesn't sort of play out necessarily how we view it perfectly, but we really wanted to sort of fill that hole that was a void, because I guess the problem is that people go to court and they're presenting these factors and whatnot, but there's that connection that's missing. And I mean, we just really want to try to fill that and then go from there. That's essentially where we started at.
Well, and I think one of the most impressive things about how you guys have done it is you've been thoughtful about the emotional impact and the trauma piece and the re-traumatization in this whole process. So I guess the only thing I would say would be great, and you may have it in there already, is the concept of every Gladue submission is a chance to educate a new judge, every single one. So to the extent that you can provide some of that what knowledge that you gained around why does community matter, and is it a person's first person experience that is the most important, as opposed to an objective Gladue report, if there's such a thing, right? So I think you've done a really, really good job of considering those things. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tom?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I am so grateful that a group of students have put together something so impressive on such a very important and sensitive topic. I would say sensitive and sensible at the same time. I'm here at the Law Society in Vancouver right now. We spent a fair amount of time talking around the bencher table about the exact kind of issues that you're tackling, and that is how to more responsibly handle the trauma that is interfacing with the legal system, and can it be done better? So I want to give you just an absolute big thumbs up for that. The one question I had, and I just thought about this, is, as you start to think about this product and application, something Carolyn said about the educational component here, could you turn this also around as kind of a educational component with a few more, like how do you educate yourself about Gladue factors, like what applies? Because this is a really cool way to go. And then second question is there an output function that allows, like, have you thought about how much time will this save the person that it's taking 2 years? Is there any metrics or any thinking around that? And I appreciate this is like a first MVP version, but anything that can take a 2-year time limit down to X is a really cool statistic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I can field the first question. As far as, looking at it more as an educational tool, I know we actually started out, wanting to create it as more of a connection tool to other writers or to other resources, and to educate people on these sensitive topics. And we quickly learned that if we wanted to make something that was, more so, I guess, practical in the sense of using it like during practice, we had to sort of pivot a little bit, like we said in the presentation, to something that was more, based around kind of individualizing factors in an efficient way. But as far as education goes, I mean, the tools are all there. Actually, they're very much built into the framework of the app already. And that was originally something that we had discussed. So I think that in the future we could absolutely use it as a tool that would provide information or be a connection rather than just streamlining things, if that makes sense.
I see Sarah, and I also recall there was like a second half of Tom's question. So, can you?
I can wait.
Tom, could you remind us the second half?
Yeah, I kind of forgot. Sorry.
No problem. Hey, it's Friday. Yeah, the one thing that I would be interested in, and it's really, it's a big question. It's really an opportunity. Is there any way you can, have you thought about, or is there any way to kind of find a way, if you haven't yet, to figure out how much time this will shave off this 2-year process? I'm looking at the pain points you had on the front end, and I'm like, wow, these are some pain points. You're mitigating and eliminating pain. What would be the pain mitigation on the time?
Maybe Nick can expand on this, but I mean, we haven't really put it into practice yet. So we just know that it's gonna cut down that time frame substantially, because we're just filling the void right now of like getting GLADU factors into the submission process. So until it sort of gets taken up and starts being used, we're not totally sure on that aspect of it. How would I answer that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, we don't have an exact time, but But as far as getting it, like I said before, kind of from the 2-year aspect of the GLADU writer down to maybe if you're getting, let's say in an occurrence of someone who's looking at a 3-month sentence or something along those lines, trying to make it so that it's going to be less of that time. So yeah, as far as Sean said, there's no not like exact numbers we could give, but we definitely want to try and make it more relevant and more usable to apply to everyone who could use it. So
yeah, I think just to sort of add to that point, it's difficult to give you a sort of a precise number, just on account of the fact that there are so many sort of variables and circumstances at play that could sort of amount to more research being done, less research being done. But from all of our discussions that we had with lawyers, with GLADU writers, the one common denominator was that this was a very lengthy process in general. And so by streamlining it, we do really think that we'll be saving the lawyer considerable amounts of time.
Sarah, I think you're up.
I really like this idea. It seems like a really nice way of processing it, and the report, the draft report that it gave out seemed like a really nice document. What I wondered is if you'd given any thought to people like self-represented litigants using something like this, where it may be that GLADU factors and GLADU writers may be a little bit kind of beyond their knowledge, and as a way to kind of bridge that gap for them. Or do you see this more as something that would be primarily aimed at lawyers on behalf of clients?
I can start off again. So when we first envisioned it, we had sort of a dichotomy of users. So we had legal counsel, and then we had someone just maybe using the app, kind of potentially stumbling their way through it, but they need the assistance of the factors and they want to get to that end goal. So I mean, we started with that, but as we, given the time constraints in the development process, we ended up just condensing it to legal counsel for now. But that's definitely like an aspect that we incorporate further down the line, I think, because like this goes beyond just legal counsel, I think. But we just, for the sake of getting to something that's actionable now, we focused specifically on the legal counsel route right now.
And
yeah,
and I think
kind of almost. Oh, sorry, you go, Nick.
Okay, I was just gonna say, and I think sort of to build off of Sean's point in that regard, that really sort of speaks to our commitment to using plain language throughout the app. We wanted to try and make the app as accessible as possible to anyone that uses it, so that someone that doesn't necessarily have a legal background can still make their way through the app. So
who
yeah,
did you test that with,
absolutely.
Nick? Who
Pardon?
did you test it with? Who did you test it with?
We've tested it with just sort of like friends and family at this point. Like, yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's fair.
And adding to Nick, in the report, we also include case law, and that case law is based on BC courts. And so it would be easy to rely on for if non-lawyers wanted to use it, and just add in whatever information they want to add in briefly, and then use that resource.
Yeah, I think if we could, bring it or increase it or expand on it in the future, we would absolutely want to. It almost ties back to the previous question about, making it more of an informational system. If we could, have a dichotomy where it can be informationally based or function for counsel if they need it, that would be maybe a vision for the future. So.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think at this point we can go to the next group. They will be presenting the proof of vaccination guide, and it's handy that Ashwin has added COVID to his username, which means that he is talking about an app that has to do with COVID vaccination, not that he is or has COVID. So over to the second group, thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start by saying great job to the Gladue group. That was a great presentation. And like Manny said, it's a very sensitive topic, and you guys did a great job getting that across. Next, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional lands of the Kamloops Tishkwepnik, and to thank everyone for being here today. Myself, Patrick, and my colleagues, Ashwin, Chanpreet, David, Jordan, and Harjot, have developed an application that we feel centralizes information with respect to proof of vaccination in British Columbia and the obligations that businesses, essential and non-essential, have. So 2 years ago, I don't think any of us predicted that we'd be living in the state that we are today. I think many of us didn't expect to have to wear masks everywhere we went, to distance from others, and at times to even have regulations against who you're allowed to have in your own home. I know I didn't expect to finish my final 2 years of law school from my bedroom. As you can see, I'm presenting from my bedroom. And it's been an unorthodox experience, to say the least. But as a society, we've adopted, we've changed, and we've learned to live with COVID-19, and we've adapted to reduce the risk of the spread. We've now been able to open up many of our non-essential economic sectors, such as dining out, going to movies, live sporting events, concerts, recreation. And it's something that I think society as a whole needed. And what we're trying to do is prevent that from being regulated again, especially with the new variant coming out, and having businesses have the opportunity to have a centralized information space where they can use the app to guide themselves to answer some questions that we found were very important for many of the non-essential businesses. So with respect to the guests and customers that many businesses see, at the top of their mind now is safety. Where am I going to go where I can feel safe, where I can feel secure, and where I don't put myself at risk of coming into contact with COVID-19. This is developed by businesses doing what they can and following regulations to the best of their ability to protect these individuals. The things like putting up plexiglass between tables, which we've seen at restaurants, wearing masks at the gym, having to have masks on when you're not eating at movie theaters and sporting events. We're doing things that allow society to move forward while living through a pandemic. Now, what we've done, again, is centralize much of the information that we found was scattered across many different platforms on the internet and on government websites. Now, we've used, I'd say, 3 pillars or themes throughout the process of developing our app. One is safety, the next is centralization, and the last is simplicity. And that has to do with more of a simplistic user interface something that doesn't take a long time, something that's quick and easy for a restaurant, a host, a server, a manager to pull up and quickly go through the application and get the answers that they need. I know and I have experience with these needs because I personally have worked in the service industry for the past 10 years, and I continue to work as a bartender and server now, which I've been grateful to do throughout the pandemic. But there have been challenges. I've been, restaurants have had to close for times throughout the pandemic. My restaurant has closed 3 separate times, leaving me personally without income at times. And also the owner of our business, Rob, who's a fantastic human being, loses tons of money for himself in revenue because of a COVID outbreak or regulations that the government has put in place. Now, what I've learned and what I've been able to identify, as well as colleagues that I've spoken to in the service industry from present, past, and from different cities that I know, that I've lived in, and people that I've met. These are the 3 key problems that have been seen and faced in the service industry, which also applies to other non-essential industries that have to follow the same regulations. So the first one is, and it's a little less prevalent now for restaurants because everyone has to be fully double vaccinated, but for non-essential businesses and for event holders, this is still an important topic, and that's knowing when a customer needs to show proof of vaccination. So that's one area that we're going to visit today. The next is what proper proof of vaccination looks like from outside of British Columbia. This is the one that I personally have seen the most hiccups with, and that's because we haven't had a centralized area where we can see proof of vaccination from other provinces and out of country. So at times, restaurant hosts, hostesses, servers can just blindly be accepting vaccination that may be fake. And that's something that we're trying to prevent with the development of this application. And lastly is these hosts and servers and a lot of people that do work in service industries, which is generally not essential businesses, are young. They're 17, 18, sometimes 16-year-old hosts at restaurants. And for them to have to turn away a guest because of their inability to show proof of vaccination can be hard for them to do, and it can cause further problems. So we have some educational videos showing how to deal with guests who refuse to show proof of vaccination. So that's all for me. I'm going to pass on to Harjot. He's going to identify these problems, speak to them a little more, and then also discuss some further market opportunities that we have identified as a group.
Thanks, Pat. So just take a second for you, or just give you all a second to take in all this information. Great, got it? Okay, let's go next slide. So that was a lot of information from many sources. And the last page, I don't know if anybody speaks or reads German, but the last page was in German. And the overflow of information can be quite overwhelming. So one of the situations that Pat talked about actually arises from a real life problem where someone comes in and attempts to show proof of vaccination from Germany, and restaurant owners and servers in Kamloops have no idea if it's true. So these are real issues. So when we discuss the problems, we need to understand why the problems actually exist. Business owners and event hosts often are scouring the provincial website for guidance on proof of vaccination requirements. Some know more than others, but essentially there is no personalized response to your needs. You're kind of digging on your own and trying to find what you need to find. For workers, largely they're getting their instructions internally from their organizations, essentially what their boss tells them. The consequence of that is that the resources are usually also only what the boss provides. There's no real streamlined information or decision-making process, and there's no comprehensive information base for proof examples or guidance on how to communicate those rules to customers. If we go next slide. So what's the danger of that? On one hand, first, you have these multiple decentralized sources of information, even within Canada, that try to tell you what the restrictions are and what they're required. But then once you have this massive information, there's also a lack of comprehensive data and guidance about how to navigate the restrictions. All the confusion puts the pressure squarely on the business owner or event host, who can face serious financial and reputational harms for non-compliance. Even if they want to comply, sometimes they just don't know how. Therefore, the goal of this application is to provide a comprehensive and easily accessible proof of vaccination guide to consumers. Usability and the design of the app is central to that. So we want the app to be accessible to both frequent users, like servers, while still being clear and informative enough for those who have more discrete or bespoke needs, like an event host, someone who holds maybe multiple types of events and they're not quite sure how the specific event at hand is impacted by the function, by the restrictions. We've tailored both the functional structure of the app as well as the words that we use in the app to make the app accessible. And we've done that with some very valuable feedback from potential users, some of who are on the call today. So to show you how that actually works, the app logic and the outputs, I'm going to toss it to Ashwin and Champy.
Thank you, Harjo. That was great. So I'm just going to jump right into our app here. So this is the front page of our app. A lot of discussion went into the layout of this first page, and we essentially are trying to frame customer or user expectations with this page. The first option is for business owners and event organizers to check the requirements of guests and patrons. As Pat said, frontline workers can often encounter unfamiliar proof of vaccine, such as out of province or out of country. The second option is designed to address that. The third option provides immediate help in case a patron is refusing to show proof of vaccination. Chanpreet will talk about this a bit more after I'm done. So for demonstration purposes, I will use the app as a new owner or manager of a restaurant who doesn't know if proof of vaccination is required from patrons on the desktop version of the app. So I would click the rules because I do not know if someone needs to provide proof of vaccination. And then it asks me, what am I best, which describes me best, and I would say business here. So my restaurant provides takeout and seated dining, so I'm going to say both here. The business is conducted, also both. And okay, so we offer seated dining. This is a determinative answer here. And it gives us a very clear answer. Your business must verify proof of vaccination to allow people to access their services. Then it gives me the steps to verify the proof of vaccine. And it shows me how to scan as well. And finally, it shows me when the app was last updated. So it was, the information is updated. I know I can rely on this. Perfect. Now I know that all patrons are required to show proof of vaccine to be seated, and I can see how up to date this information is. Now I can actually give this app to the frontline workers at my restaurant for when they come across unfamiliar vaccination records. So I'm going to show that on the phone here. Oh, there we go. All right, so this is the phone version of the app. And on this version of the app, this is the most likely used tree is this non-BC vaccination proof valid? We'll hit begin session here. And in this case, let's say our patron is from Alberta, because I'm sitting in Alberta right now. Perfect. So it gives me the option of Alberta right at the top. And it shows me exactly what I need to look for proof of vaccination. Again, it shows me when it was last updated. And it also tells me the BC Card Verifier app can scan the QR codes from the Alberta proof of vaccine. So now the frontline worker should feel safe knowing that this patron has legitimate proof of vaccine, and this patron should feel safe knowing that this restaurant is methodical about checking for proof. Over time, I feel like this kind of organized checking should increase the trust of the community in the restaurant and vice versa. Now I'm going to take you for a quick peek under the hood, and you'll see exactly what's going on for this app to interact with the user and give them the most appropriate answers. So this is much like Nick's if-then statements rule, but this start button here represents our first page in this case, the introduction page that I mentioned. These nodes, these hexagonal nodes, each represent a multiple choice question, which helps us set the answer for the question. And these two blue rectangles are just they just provide text based on your answers. The links between these nodes are essentially just if-then statements. So if the location of proof is answered as out of country, the next question will provide a list of countries, and if the location of proof is provided as out of province, then it provides a list of provinces. This is the use case scenario I demonstrated. The app followed the out of province pathway. The pathways for determining whether or not proof is required is a little bit more complicated, but essentially follows the same types of if-then rules. Once it's been determined where precisely the proof of vaccination is from, the app will provide a specific answer in these text-based documents based on your input. This is how we got the specific example of Albertan proof of vaccination. And at this point in the conclusion, the app always offers the user an optional survey or the ability to restart the app by going to the front page. That's it for me. Now Chanpreet will show frontline workers what to do if a patron refuses to provide proof of vaccination.
Thank you, Ashwin. So imagine you're working in a restaurant as a host and a customer is refusing to show proof of vaccination. Perhaps they're telling you that they have a medical exemption, or maybe they're yelling obscenities at you. You have no idea how to handle this situation, and you don't have the time to dig through multiple government websites and reports. Then you remember that the app that helped you with verifying unfamiliar proof of vaccination also provides information on what to do when someone is refusing to show proof. So you get on the app and click the refusal option. You're immediately led to a report that helps solve your problem. Amongst other information, the report lets you know that the person refusing to show proof must leave the premises, that there are no exemptions, not even medical, and that there are fines in place for both parties if proof of vaccination is not shown. The report also includes a short video near the end that shows an example of how workers can respond in a situation where a customer is refusing to show proof. Could you please play the video, Ashwin?
Hey, can I get a table for two, please? Yes. First, could I please see your proof of vaccination card and accompanying government ID? Well, I can show you my government ID, but I don't believe in proof of vaccination, and I don't think that's any of your business personally. Unfortunately, the BC rules do require that you provide proof of vaccination. There are no exemptions if you want to sit down here. So I do sympathize that you don't want to take the vaccine or provide the card, but unfortunately we will face fines, and you will face fines as well. It's already a hard time, and we won't be able to sit you. Unfortunately, you do have to leave. Oh, screw this establishment.
Thanks, Ashwin. So we thought the video would be a fun and effective way to convey the information, especially if someone is a more visual person. We do acknowledge that someone who is in a rush might not have time to watch the video, but there's always the option to watch it later, and it is only 45 seconds long. There's also a possibility that restaurant managers could use the video and the rest of the report page as an educational tool to help employees before a customer refusal incident occurs. So that concludes our explanation on what the app does and the app's inner workings. Now I'll pass it off to Jordan, and he'll talk about the value that the app adds.
Hello, can you go one more slide forward? Awesome. Okay, thank you. So I want to highlight a couple things that this app does. Hopefully you saw it from that presentation, but I want to highlight a few really value add areas of this that this app hits on. So number one is it reduces risk for businesses. As shown earlier, businesses can face fines. They can face financial and reputational harm if they are not complying with these rules. And in this current climate, it's already hard enough being a restaurant or an event, and being hit with this fine, it could be potentially devastating to these businesses. So having something like this that gives you the most updated rules and helps you be confident that you are making the correct decisions to be compliant is going to be very valuable to your business. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So you're also going to attract more business using this app. So Patrick was talking about it at the start of the presentation that people are sick of this stuff. They want to get out. They want to go to a restaurant. They want to go to an event with their friends and family. But at the same time, they want to be safe. I mean, this is a serious disease. People don't want to get it. They don't want to spread it. So if people know that certain restaurants are using technology and being proactive in making sure they're compliant, people are going to want to go to those businesses. They are going to feel more comfortable spending their money there because they can go there and not fear that they're going to get this deadly disease. So if a business is employing this technology and really committing to safety and compliance, they're going to get a leg up over other businesses who aren't doing that, who maybe have lax compliance requirements. So using something like this, people will want to go to those businesses. They're going to attract more business. Now you can go final slide, next one. And also happier employees. So as we've pointed out, it can be really stressful. As anybody here knows, it's stressful if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, especially if you have an angry customer in front of you. So having something at your fingertips to check what the rules are, to check what this card looks like, to reconfirm that no, sorry, there are no exemptions to this rule, can really lead to a more confident employee when they're relaying this information, when they're checking this card. A more confident employee is a happier employee who's also a more efficient employee, which also leads to a more effective business if all your employees are happy and efficient. And finally, that also leads to a happy customer that's gonna want to keep coming back there and spending their money because they're having a great experience every time, a quick, seamless experience that's safe. I'll pass it on to David now, and David's going to talk about the scalability of this app and the user feedback.
Thanks a lot, Jordan. So to begin with the user feedback that led to some of the development choices of our app, we had potential users, including an events planner and a server, test our app to give us feedback. And based on the feedback we received, we made the following changes and development choices. The first was what we understood that we really needed to focus on the language to make the questions and report outputs useful, easy to read, and highly relevant to the specific user, whether they are an events planner, business owner, or frontline staff at a restaurant who are interacting directly with the customer. And we also designed our user interface to be very clean, pleasing to look at, and quick to interact with. There's not too many confusing choices or anything extra going on the screen. And one of the main pieces of feedback that we received was that we still do need links to the specific language in the public health orders. And that can be an extra resource for specifically the business owners and event planners to ensure that they are 100% compliant with the most up-to-date rules. And that concludes the user feedback portion. And I'm going to move on to the scalability of the app. And so there's three main components to the scalability that I'll talk about. The first being that there is a lot of potential to build bespoke features for specific clients. An example, we could build the training feature for staff members. For example, if we have a server on the first day of their job, we could even have the employer make them take a test on our app to make sure that they understand the procedure and that they're going to be checking the proof of vaccination correctly with the customers on their first day at work. We could also build out the application to include other COVID-19 public health requirements, masks, capacity limits being an example of those. And we could also make them health region specific. For a time, the interior health region had different requirements than the lower mainland, for example. And we did think about how once we expand beyond our initial customer base, which would be volunteer organizations and small businesses where we wouldn't charge a fee, which we think really furthers the access to the legal knowledge, which can reduce risk for these customers. We thought about how we could monetize in a broader sense with larger businesses. And we think that this could be a really compelling app to offer as a software as a service on a monthly subscription basis. And so that is how we view the future of the app. And there may be other elements that some of our attendees have ideas about today, but this is what we really wanted to focus on. So I really want to thank, before we end here, I want to thank Kevin Mulcahy from Neurologic. He provided us with the knowledge and the tools to do this. I want to thank Katie Sykes, who had the idea for this awesome class. I want to thank Kara Karpluk, who is the events planner from TRU Law and helped us with some of our choices in the app. And I really want to thank Rose Morgan as well. She is a previous student who helped us out a lot. And to end off here, we'd love to ask if any of the attendees have any questions for us.
If you could unshare the screen with the slides, it'll make it easier to see all the judges. There we go. Caroline, you want to kick it off?
Sure, why not? I thought it was great. I am someone who worked their way through university the entire way as a cocktail waitress, and I am 100% aware of the frontline risks in being in those positions. I mean, I really love it. I think it's actually super practical and really important. I think in the video, I wondered about the guy standing and saying you can't come in, but wouldn't it be helpful if he had a QR code that could give the guy over there who disagrees a link to whatever the piece of legislation is that we're relying on? Because I don't want to give the guy my phone. I don't want to interact in that way. I don't want him to touch my phone. Thank you very much. But I think there is some real value in the moment proof of authority that I think helps de-escalate. They may not like it, but there it is in black and white. So that would be my only and I love the scalability thing and all that stuff. So that would be my only piece of feedback. I don't have a question about it. It makes total sense to me, but that would be the piece that I would consider.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually, that we hadn't thought about.
Yeah, so in some restaurants, I feel like they have iPads that should do the checking at the start. It would be very easy to integrate because our final report, which says that they cannot have that they cannot enter without proof of vaccination, does have the link to the BC government website, which directly shows them why there is none. It would be very easy to show them in the case that you have a iPad at the front of your business, that you'd be able to show them why they cannot enter, or for that matter, you could show them why they have to provide proof of vaccination to enter.
I thought I saw, oh, Lawrence, take it away.
Sure, I'll go next. Congratulations again. Another impressive effort, 2 for 2. And, you know, like Caroline, I also paid my way through law school by waiting tables. So I do have a more direct perspective on this. I thought that you've done a great job setting out the compelling business need. I liked a couple things about your presentation that I thought were really interesting. You know, the German document that was, I thought, surprising. So points for that. Unexpected bonus also for me was the strategies that servers and others can use to get out of sticky situations. So I think that's above and beyond. I thought the video was kind of the right combination of a serious topic and kind of lightly portrayed. I also like how the overall application was very visual, had lots of images of, you know, correct proofs of vaccination, etc. And I think that's in that business. I think that's going to be really key. And finally, your focus on confidence, I thought was the right one. Struck the right tone for me. And the idea that came into my head, or the question that came into my head is, as a consumer of restaurants and other services, I'm constantly wondering if the rules changed this morning, or whether they're going to change tomorrow, right? And I know that you've already been thoughtful about it. I saw there are kind of jump links to the orders themselves. There's a reference in the responses about the rules being up to date. I wondered if there might be a more prominent role for a date stamp, maybe right the very first thing you see, right? Which is almost the opposite of the best before date. It's like, this thing is good to December 3rd, 2021, that kind of thing, right? And especially if you're imagining software as a service, I can imagine you pushing out, well, almost on whenever there's an update, or even if there's not an update, you'd push out to all your clients, right? That this thing's good for today, and I can rely on that. I can be confident. Anyway, I wanted to get your reaction about like the ever-changing landscape for rules, and how difficult that's going to be to. Maybe it's not going to be difficult from your perspective, but how can you manage that so that as a customer, I can really trust it?
I think when Ashwin was going through the Neota example, where you could see the link trees connecting to different objects, if there was anything new that was added in that we felt was necessary to involve in the app, it's super simple to create a new tree that would offer another choice for them at the start of the page. But then for anything else, like the proof of vaccination, the vaccination cards from other provinces, we can go into the app, our studio application, and fix that within a few minutes. So it's very, very simple to do. It would just be staying on top of it. So say if a provincial health order came out tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., it'd take 5 to 10 minutes to update that information and have it up to date for that day.
Just really quickly, I also used to have the disclaimer at the very top of the app, but just some feedback, some user feedback seemed to indicate that wasn't a great idea, so we moved it to the bottom. But I can completely appreciate that the updated message should be at the very top, as in when this app was last updated.
Sarah.
I guess I'm not sure that I have a question, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, because to me, I see kind of multiple user bases. Like it's servers and it's restaurants, but there's different groups within that. So there's individual servers who may want something to back up their own work themselves, which may not be sanctioned by the restaurant, in which case they'd probably be dealing just with the primary health orders and everything. And then I also, especially if you wanted to pursue this as a revenue generating entity, I could see a real option where you could have some kind of customization available for a larger company like McDonald's, where they probably have their own internal policies as well as the government policies. And if they could, kind of subscribe and get those internal policies recognized within the larger system. And I was just curious if you had thought about that at all.
We did initially think of kind of customizing it for every different group of non-essential businesses. That was like our first thought. We just didn't have enough time to do that in the beginning. So that might have fallen into like the individual server kind of idea that you were saying. I think restaurant dependent, it's, again, if we did monetize it, it wouldn't be very hard to integrate. For example, like I work at Brown Social House. We follow mainly just the provincial health orders, but the things that would be important to add in there, like the rules that staff follow in the back or the kitchen has to follow now because of the COVID-19 policies. For example, like we have to have our mask on at all times unless we're seated in the back eating, just like everyone else. We can only have 2 people in the back staff area. So I could see that stuff definitely being integrated into our business. And that would be something that would be like simply integrated. And then I just wanted to clarify, when you're speaking between servers and hosts, what was the question specifically? You were saying some servers would be independent.
Oh, I could just imagine individual I guess I'm thinking hosts. I'm thinking of the people with the gatekeeping function, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that I could imagine a situation where in some cases it would be the supervisor or the business that would say, we want you to use this app. And sometimes I could just see individuals just thinking, I need help. I don't know how to do this. So I'm going to download this app personally. And so it's a little bit different whether it's a workplace imposed policy to use it as opposed to an individual using it.
Okay. Do you mean like not a guest in a restaurant, or like actually an individual server using it to like learn more and educate themselves?
I guess I'm thinking more of the host, like an individual host who is having to make that decision of letting someone in or not. They might want the education and some kind of authority that they could use, even though they're not. It's not that the restaurant isn't telling them to.
Yeah. So I guess I have an answer to this now. So how Ashwin had showed us on his cell phone, how that there's like mobile capabilities. So at my restaurant specifically, the hosts generally are the first ones at the door. Servers and managers also all help seat, but we have an iPad that has a seating chart on it, which also has the QR code scanner. So that could be added onto that app. And we also have a cell phone that's just like not work, like it's just doesn't have data, it's just connected to the Wi-Fi, that we can also use for this application, which we did try on Wednesday. So the hosts had that in their pocket if they ever needed to pull it out and use it in case they had questions. So I think that might be to the question that you're answering or asking.
Also, for example, I'm on the SLS. The SLS is going to use this app for sure for example, the Law Ball, which we have in March. Just to verify each person whether or not, first of all, we need to check for vaccines for the event, and also for individual checking, and that would just be me or somebody else from the SLS that's just standing there as the gatekeeper.
Tom, did you want to ask a question, or has yours kind of been asked and answered?
Well, I might follow up again, because I think
Yeah.
Lawrence covered it, but as you do this app, it sounds like, again, just a great tool to really help people that are feeling a sense of anxiety about customers coming in, and maybe there's that unnecessary stress that this app can just give some comfort in. From the employment perspective, I think it's Patrick that mentioned you have a great employer. Do you think the employer would have a sense of confidence if there was some sort of another layer to where an employee could watch these videos and then kind of have some self-validation, like, look, I've got 100% on the 3 questions that matter for this week, as it changes every week. And so there's some sort of a kind of a logic, and maybe instead of satisfying oneself, also reporting back to the employer so that he knows all his people are good.
Yeah, we definitely have like training modules that are just accessed on the internet. So he could definitely just add an extra module on there that has questions with respect to the new edition of the app. And that could just be assigned for the day of or the next day of work that an employee had. So could definitely, again, simply be very, very simply be integrated into at least our practice at my restaurant.
All right. If there are no other questions from the judges, those were fantastic, and you have a very, very difficult job ahead of you. I don't envy you. So Kara's going to help me out here. We're going to do this complicated thing because we can't give you a breakout room in the webinar format. So we're going to ask you to jump into that other Zoom call and maybe turn off I think you can exit this and come back, or just turn off your camera and mic so we don't get a weird feedback loop. And then the rest of us, for the attendees, I think I can just bring all of you in and make you panelists so that we can talk to each other. And I have a little poll for people's choice. So I'll run that while we're waiting for the judges.
So do we have the invite? Is it one of the emails that was sent to us?
It's in the chat. Kara just put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Oh, and attendees, I'm going to stop making you panelists. So if you don't want your camera on, you can turn your camera off so I don't like surprise you. All right, that was a low-tech way to do that. So if anyone is in the attendee group and wants to either join us here or just be able to speak, put a note in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that. I'm going to launch my little People's Choice poll. Okay, did that work? Excellent.
Panelists can't vote.
Oh, what? Oh, no. That was an error. Oh, well, like I said, it's unscientific. Oh, hi, Eli and Ravi. Hello. Panelists can't vote, but you can talk.
It was great working with my group, guys. Thank you for, hosting us and doing it all.
Yeah, you both of the groups did a fantastic job. That was really impressive. We have one more vote to come in on the poll. The highly unscientific poll. I did not know exactly how this works. Oh, great. I see Ashwin posted a link to the app. So people can try it out. And the Glad You group, you might want to do that too. So people can actually play with it.
Yeah, I can do that right now.
We may have, I may have done another screw up with the poll because it looks like one person can't see it. So based on our extremely flawed poll that only 7 people got to vote in, the GLADU sentencing assistant won the People's Choice vote. But there was also a strong showing by the proof of vaccination guide. Okay, good. Share it, there we go. Yeah, it is almost impossible to choose. I should have put in a tie option or something. Okay, I'll get rid of that. So I have no idea how long it will take them to deliberate. I remember that last year it was quite long. I think they had a really difficult time. And it was harder because there were 4 groups. So it may not be quite that long this time. But we sort of had loosely hoped to have a little bit of time for kind of, you know, virtual celebration cocktails, which we can't do unfortunately in person. And this also can work as that time. I mean, I'm really grateful to all of you who came along to watch. It's just great to have your support and enthusiasm. And, you know, if you have any feedback or questions or anything for the groups, this is your chance.
I was wondering if you've had, Katie, any, it's Steve Guthrie speaking, any sort of feel for how often these applications in your coursework actually are picked up and are used commercially or used by organizations, because there's really fascinating ideas, and it would be super neat if in fact they're actually long-term used in the real world.
I agree, and it's part of my dream for this whole sort of project. So far that hasn't happened. We've had a couple of projects where we kind of got close. We have a limitation because the time, I mean, that's part of what's so impressive about what the students did. These groups started from zero. In terms of the technology, they had never used it before, but also, you know, near zero in the subject matter knowledge, and they turned themselves into experts in 3 months, right? Turn themselves into experts, turn themselves into brilliant designers, experts in gathering user feedback and incorporating it into their projects and building a Neota. And there's a gap between the really impressive projects that they can build in that time and something that's actually ready for prime time and use by the public. And closing that gap is something I really want to do. This year, for the first time, we have one more step that I think is going to get us closer to that, which is, fortunately, the law school approved a proposal to allow students to do more work on this as a kind of independent project for credit. So we're kind of treating it as like the equivalent of doing an independent research project, but it's like the 21st century version of doing an independent research project. So I know that there are some students who are in these groups tonight who want to do that or going to apply to do it and continue developing and sort of perfecting what they've made. And as you saw, they've already got ideas for sort of how they could get it like to market. I mean, the projects in the context of the class, they are access to justice pro bono projects. But I mean, you can see, oh, hello, there's a dog. That is very cute. That's an adorable dog. Sorry, if a dog shows up, I just stop thinking about anything else. But yeah, you can see, you know, how they have thought about how the access to justice and the free aspect can be combined with potentially a profit-making aspect as well. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. Having this new option really kind of empowers the students to do more with it. So I'm really excited to see what happens. I think sorry, Ravneet and/or Eli, I saw kind of waving there a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much, Katie, for inviting us here. I just wanted to know the platform that everyone was using to develop on, is that something that is like they're required to use, or sort of can you let us know how that came to be and a little bit about, yeah, why you chose that platform?
Yeah, so it all started in the class that Ravneet was in a long time ago. And what was that, 2015? I don't remember. A long time ago, I had a class about lawyering in the 21st century, where we did not actually like build stuff, but we did a lot of looking at what was happening in innovation in the legal profession and the use of technology. And a great desire came out of that class to be able to do hands-on work with technology. And lots of students wanted to do that. And I didn't know how. And then from sort of just poking around and looking at what was going on in the area, I came across this course that had been developed at Georgetown in the US that is like the prototype of the course we do. And at that time, I think was only offered at Georgetown. And it was a collaboration with NEOTA and Legal Services Corporation, which Kevin Mulcahy, who just appeared here, co-developed with a really cool professor at Georgetown. And there was information on their website that said, you know, you can license this, you can kind of pick this up for your own university. And so somehow through some like combination of constellations being in the right alignment, we did. And that's how we started doing it. And so there's an element of chance to that, as there is to a lot of things, but also the platform NEOTA Logic, it's very, very powerful for us to use. It's a no-code platform. So when I first started doing this, most students did not have any coding ability, or perhaps the whole class would not have any coding ability. I've noticed over the years that more and more students come and they do know how to do an awful lot of stuff that I have no idea how to do. And you can kind of see that in the beauty of the apps that they made, but you don't actually need to. I mean, I taught myself to use NEOTA just by sort of going through their own training materials. You can also see their projects kind of demonstrate that it's simple, right? You can get a lot of really complicated information and turn it into a usable thing through the technology part of it is a pretty simple process, that sort of engineering the knowledge into usable information. It's quick and easy to learn. And so it empowers students who are interested in automating processes and information to be able to do that without having a coding background. I don't know, Kevin, do you want to say anything?
Hi, can you hear me okay, Katie?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Well, congratulations to everyone. Students at TRU are always so professional and hardworking and gracious, and it's been a real pleasure to work with this school. We offer this technology to a lot of law schools in Australia and North America and in Europe, and it's a real natural fit. The DNA of young lawyers is very similar to the DNA of programmers. They may not realize it, but it's true. They just naturally take to the if-then reasoning and the ability to organize language, to do counseling and make it subtle and precise. So we've gotten a lot of traction, and I teach at Georgetown and Cornell Law. And the Cornell Law Showcase is going to happen in a couple of weeks, and those students are really going hard at it. You know, we're used by a lot of large law firms and a lot of large legal departments. So many schools are quite eager to make sure their students can walk into those institutions ready to work and ready to automate their skills and expertise. It's become quite standard. Whereas when we started a long time ago, it seemed sketchy. It seemed like robot lawyers. Oh, this wouldn't work. And the IT departments used to be defensive and say, oh yeah, we cannot have lawyers responsible for software. What a joke. Well, that's all changed. The IT departments are just step right back and say, okay, go at it. We know we can't do what you do with a good no-code platform. So that's my little story. Does that cover it? Any other questions?
I just wanted to say, Kevin, like on behalf of my team, like just thank you so much for everything that you've done for us throughout the semester. Like your support was just, it was incredible. So thank you.
Well, Nick, you're one of the ringers that Katie talked about. You know, the people come in and all of a sudden they're opening up the back of the platform and they're rigging up all this stuff that you didn't know you could even do. And we try to enable that as much as we can. We try to make this platform as extendable and as interactive with other platforms as we can. And for people who do know how to use custom CSS and can do their own work in HTML, they can go around the no-code controls that most of us use and do their custom work. So that's why sometimes you'll see some legal expert systems that have really extraordinary backgrounds and additional features.
I echo that sentiment as well. Thank you, Kevin, very much for all the help you gave me, and you know, basically recreating my app for me and all that. Also, I want to say thank you to Nick, because I feel like I learned a lot from Nick as well throughout this process. Even though we were on opposite sides of the aisle, we were consistently chatting and sharing notes and sharing knowledge.
Well, thank you, Ashwin, as well. Like, I mean, obviously you shared a lot of wisdom and helped our team out a lot as well. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I see, thanks to a helpful person who messaged me. Melanie, did you want to ask a question? Oh, we can't hear you for some reason. I don't know why.
I don't
You're
know.
not. Oh, now it works. Okay, that works.
So I was just writing a comment. Thank you so much for the invitation to be able to see this. I'm so happy and heartened to see the teamwork that is displayed. You know, from my recollection of university, nobody liked teamwork, and it is so clear that it was put to such good efforts here. And I'm also, as you know, Katie, so keen to see innovation in the classroom. I think this is fabulous, and I'm so happy to see this is, you know, that this is being put towards such a really important thing, which is solving legal problems with technology in a practical way. And that's in the interest of access to justice. I think I'm just so impressed. I'm impressed with your work. I'm impressed with what everybody's done. And I particularly liked what, was it Kevin? What he said about, sorry? I think it was Kevin, right?
Yes.
So what you said about lawyers being able to be empowered to use technology to achieve things and not being, you know, resistant to that. I think that this is exposing people to all the possibilities. And I'm just really happy to see what everybody's done, and especially to see it being done. If I can lean toward the Gladu Reports app, I think that the approach to such a difficult issue with such an open-minded and you know, sensitive and engaging way is so wonderful. And also it shows, you know, just with reference to Myrna McCallum, how ordinary lawyers can have huge impacts on the legal profession in Canada. And I'm sure that all of you will do that as well, because with technology, you can have more of a voice. And I wish you all well for your future. Thanks.
And John Lord, are you out there? Did you want to jump in? Oh, hang on. I have to do this. There we go.
If I unmute now, can you hear me?
Yes. And I should say, it is rare for John Lord to need permission to talk.
I don't know if you can see me or not. Are you able to see me? Or just a photo? Oh, I can join as a here we go.
There you go.
I can be seen and I can talk.
Excellent.
Hi everybody on the other side of the Pacific there. I'm down in Melbourne. I'm the chairman of Neotologic and one of the founders of the company. I've devoted the last 12 years of my life to building this enterprise. It's just absolutely fantastic to see another generation of students, particularly Canadian students, and working on great problems using the no-code platform that we've all put, Kevin, myself, now quite a large team, I think about 70 people, all working on developing this platform for use by lawyers. And it's this platform and the ideas that are embodied in it and the things that you showed you could do today are just the beginning of that stone rolling down the hill, or the avalanche beginning, but the future of your practicing lives will be very much determined by embedding the expertise of yourselves and your organizations that you work for into applications that everybody can access 24/7 and be able to use. I just finished an article that'll be published actually this month now, on no-code platforms and access to justice. And in it, I cite some research by Microsoft that suggested that over the next 5 years, 500 million applications will be built in the world using no-code platforms. So many of those, I believe, will be in the legal market as we take all the different rules and balancing judgments and delivery of different permutations of advisory services into the online world. And I just thought both examples were fantastic. Neotologic has a joint venture with Littler Mendelson, which is the largest employment law firm in the world, but in the United States. They have built a COVID vaccine return to work app. In the first 3 months, it was used over 1 million times by corporates that have that issue. And my wife and I have been watching an amazing program here in Australia, but I believe it's available all over the world. I was reading a review of it in the New York Times the other day called Total Control, which is on very much around the Indigenous experience in Australia. And we've done some great work through Melbourne Law School, and the teams that Kevin works with there on Aboriginal housing issues in Australia. But that sentencing application was spectacular. I mean, if you could find the appropriate sponsor, and one of the senior people on the call mentioned the possibility of there being a national organization in Canada that might sponsor that. But I'll be there in a sec. I'm being told my oatmeal is ready. But yeah, I mean, to build up a database of all the permutations of cultural experience and interaction, that could bear on the sentencing of native people, native and dispossessed peoples. And to have that methodology proved in Canada and then deployed in the rest of the world would be a spectacular accomplishment. So if the Dean is still listening, and I noted the South African accent as well, so I'm sure there'll be uses for that sort of thing down there as well. But the overrepresentation and mistreatment of Aboriginal people all around the world by colonial legal systems is something that systems like this, and you demonstrated today, could make a great contribution to. So it was another great class. I love coming and watching these. I've had to watch the last couple from Australia because of the current circumstances, but they're no less enjoyable for doing so. And it was great to see. And thanks again, Katie, really, and Kevin, really, really fabulous.
Thanks for always being a real cheerleader for this, John. Really appreciate it. Our judges are back, so it is the moment of truth.
Oh, I see Melissa's hand up.
Yeah, I think I was.
Was that an accident?
I think she wanted to ask something, and we were conversation sort of went on, and so I was suggesting that we can talk after, because we'll have a little bit of time after, and you know, we want to hear the results.
Well, I was nominated as jury person. I think it's probably low person on the totem pole's job. That's me. Or last in the door is probably more to the point. John, I want to thank you on behalf of the judging panel for your organization's support of this program. It's become iconic, and it could never happen without a software champion. So thank you so much for that. I'm so impressed. I really am.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have said that I will lead, but I have also asked my fellow judges to jump in and add their points of view as well. We were away for a while. Did you notice? we had several conversations and angles and things to think about, and really it was just a matter of inches for us. But I actually raised the question of whether we had to decide, and and I was told yes. So please know, both teams, that we were so impressed and inspired with your thinking about how small, just like totally graspable pieces of small technology can actually really make big differences for people. And I will tell you, in the end, it came down for us, and I will say that we chose the GLADU submissions assistant, but I'll tell you why. It came down to really, and this is the piece we want to give to you as future lawyers and advocates for many things. It came down to how you personalize a story. So the fact that Darnell spoke, that it was grounded, it appeared to be grounded in personal experience, and there was something about that. What is the meaning of what we're talking about? What does it mean in real life and real story? So I'm sure your teachers tell you this all the time, but story is everything. And in lots of ways, GLADU itself, the concept of GLADU submissions is about whole story. It's about the pieces that aren't on the table in front of the judge, because they aren't in the police record, they aren't in the social services record necessarily, they aren't in any of the records. This is a person's real story. And so your app that brought forward story to us was compelling. So I will ask my fellow judges to add to that.
Well, I don't think I could say it any better, Caroline. A virtual draw, two incredibly compelling and impressive pieces of work. If there had to be a winner, it was based on how I think we reacted emotionally to the telling of it. And I've learned in my business that you know, substance will get you so far, but yeah, you know, sometimes 80-90% of the persuasion is in the going over again and again how this is going to appear to others who are kind of getting it for the first time.
One thing I really liked about both projects was keeping the interface relatively simple. And so not creating like a huge decision tree that could get really complicated, but to have a relatively simple interface. And with the GLADU team, I liked the way that it was aimed at defense lawyers, and it took you through the app. It wasn't too many steps, and then it gave you a Word document, and it was right back in your regular workflow that you would expect to be in as you were practicing. And to me, that kind of and I liked the way that the COVID vaccine tracker, or not tracker, but it felt like it was something that could be used by the population who would be affected by it directly. And so I think that was really quite well thought out for both teams.
Yeah, and from my perspective, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to see such amazing work. It's actually quite humbling, and it's a privilege to see this hard work bear such fruit. I think there's some really good thinking and some excellent modeling on both apps. I would endorse and adopt what the other judges have already said. I was very moved by the GLADU story, and I probably could see an application of it that could fill a bigger pain point at this present time. Having said that, the COVID app, I think there's a lot of merit that I think both apps have huge potential if you want to continue with them. I know this project is only one semester with Professor Sykes, but I always get excited when I see these apps and where they might go. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you to the judges. We are so lucky to have the benefit of your wisdom and your time and your comments. It's just and just getting the fact that we know you saw these cool projects. It's really exciting. We have a fun thing to do now. We actually have a prize giving. It is a virtual prize giving because we're online, but it's a real prize. So this is the Kara's department. Ooh.
Congratulations, GLADU team.
And I think we can have it engraved, right, with the name of the team.
Yeah, it will be engraved now that we've got a winner.
Very exciting. We've never had that before, so that's a new thing. So that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. I am, as always, I'm just completely blown away by what the students managed to achieve in a really short time. And that's thanks to Neota giving us this sort of amazing turbocharge for to turn their ideas into reality. But really, at the end of the day, it's the students' hard work and creativity and originality and their commitment to the projects is what makes it work. And all of you who support this and just keep us charged up with your enthusiasm, it's wonderful. And we're just about at 6 o'clock. We sort of put on our sort of order of proceedings that it was Zoom cocktails or virtual cocktails, which is, it's not as good as real cocktails. I don't actually have any cocktails, but if people would like to stick around and talk for, 10 minutes or so, I noted, Caroline, that you had offered to answer questions, and I would not be surprised if the students had some questions or wanted to sort of glean a little more wisdom from you. And also, Melissa, I'm sorry I didn't get to your question before, but if you're out there, if you'd like to jump in now, and anybody who wants to go and enjoy your Friday night now, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your attention. Really appreciate it. Hi. Hello, Rob. So yeah, that's the end of the formal part. Did any of the students want to take advantage of the offer from the judges?
If I can just quickly speak, just want to say congratulations to the other team. You guys put so much, everyone just put so much effort into this, and obviously balancing out our others' work schedules, our other classes. It gets very tedious, and so it's a balance. So yeah, I just want to say congratulations. We got through to December, on forward, we're inching closer to graduation for the 3Ls. So yeah, this was a very cool experience, and I really appreciate all the positive comments that came behind our app idea, the Glad You app. It's something very meaningful to me. Like I said, my dad was a correctional officer for so long, and I didn't mention it in my project, but when at the time when he was the correctional officer, he would always bring the inmates. Like if I was playing hockey, he would bring them down to the ice rink, and always got them engaged in the community. If it was like going out to the woods, chopping up for wood for the elders. So yeah, that really impacted me growing up, seeing him being in that position. So that's why I wanted to be full circle and try to not invent something, but innovate something that can help Indigenous offenders. So like, again, thank you guys for those positive comments. They're really appreciative and that. So.
Oh,
Ooh, there's a
Melanie.
good question.
Yeah, Melanie has a super interesting question. If the students feel like this will change their future career plans compared to when they started law school. I bet some of you have something to say about that.
I know in our group, it's certainly been discussed quite often. I think we're all very open to embracing what the future holds for us. And yeah, we're going to do what we can with this application. And yeah, I welcome sort of the opportunities that it brings for us. And I mean, I know myself, sort of my own law school journey. I've always sort of been fluctuating as to whether I want to even sort of pursue law after law school. So this is definitely given me a lot to think about, but it's exciting in that regard. So
yeah, we just need to find that sponsor.
Yeah, just going off Nick's comment, and also John's comment earlier. If you're looking for some potential summer students or articling students to design this, we're open-minded. So
the shameful plug.
Yeah.
Or shameless.
Well, I would encourage anyone who wants to reach out to us but I would say more generally, I mean, I was a barrister originally. I got into legal tech through that. I grew an e-discovery company, which is now the largest e-discovery company in the world, employs over 1,000 lawyers. And I don't think it's necessarily appreciated in law schools how vast the legal technology industry now is. I really encourage all of you who like what you've been doing to look at the legal technology companies that are out there as offering really fabulous careers for you all. In this last year, over $2 billion has been invested into legal tech companies in North America. It's a huge ecosystem. Bill Gates said famously that nothing changes in 2 years, but everything changes in 10 years. But I promise you, in my lifetime, there's been nothing like this 2 years. I mean, everything is changing so quickly, and big organizations are moving to digitize all of their business support services, including their legal services. So there are great careers here all over Canada. My friends at Kira Systems in Toronto, for example, with their natural language processing, would be a great thing. Clio itself is a BC company, isn't it? And there's just great opportunities. So I would encourage you to look at them, and the pathways potentially, greater than you'll find in any law firm.
I see you there, Melissa, with a very cool Christmas tree. Melissa took this course in like the first or second time we did it and made this fantastic project. She worked with the TRU Legal Clinic. So it's wonderful to see an alumna
On the call.
Oh, you're still muted.
Oh,
There you
how
go.
about that? There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, I missed out last year. I wasn't able to join the call, but this year I was glad to join. I can say, I mean, my career path definitely changed trajectory after this course and the other course I took with Katie, the externship at the Civil Resolution Tribunal. Frankly, I went from a C student in family law to operating my own family practice 4 years later. So it definitely had a huge influence on me. I did want to just say to the group, the Glad You group, I think that's just an excellent project that you guys did. Everybody did a great job, obviously both groups. I was curious as if there was any consideration to the, I mean, you talked a lot about bail and sentencing, but also in family law with, there's a significant number of Indigenous children in care. So with it regards to child and family services and child advocacy, I think it would be a really useful tool as well, because very often the Glad You reports overlap into that. And around here in Northern Alberta, most people don't even know who write those reports, let alone how to do one. So I think this is something that would be really great to see on a large scale to put this out to practitioners all over the country, really.
That's so interesting. I had not made that connection.
Yeah, with the new the federal legislation, and I always forget what it's called here, where children, if they're being apprehended, so I believe it's the Act Respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Children, Youth, and Families, they now must consider a child's Indigenous background before making decisions on where they're placed in care and if they're even apprehended in the first place. And these reports are often used for parents who are Indigenous and for children to help guide the court in understanding why we're at where we're at and to help prevent the overrepresentation from continuing.
There's a new branch you can build into your app, Glad You team. All right.
Absolutely. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Really
Like you said, we wish we could have developed so much more, but there's so much more to be added and a lot more research. But yeah, future considerations, that's something obviously to consider. Something very important, especially an upbringing, a child's upbringing and where it's led them to in their life. You know, we can obviously use that as a or, you know, just for the defensive counsel, utilizing these Glad You factors and reports. So yeah, definitely that's awesome to consider. You know, like, yeah, other than that, sorry, I just thought.
Thanks. I want to say one thing as also brand new to me. I am a member of the Law Society's Regulation Sandbox Advisory Group, which I'm sure you guys are all nodding your head, so I'm assuming you know what that is. But really, it's the only playground within the existing legislation that allows for things to be tried out with a no action letter. And I'm sorry Tom's left because he's a bencher and he should hear this, but it is important in the realm of trying new things that you know whether or not you're in the green zone or the yellow zone. If you're going to realm into the yellow zone, which I'm going to say a lot of good ideas are going to do that and should be pushing hard against it. You want to be getting some support on that, or you want to be encouraging people who can apply for support on that. So it's being used primarily right now by paralegals. but it sure could be used by law students. It sure could be used by articling students. It could be experimented with in quite more radically different ways about providing access to justice in different ways than a formally called and licensed lawyer. So in the realm of careers you didn't think of yet, or things that you might consider, I want you to know that the innovation sandbox concept is probably here to stay. And it was sort of confirmed today in the Law Society Ventures meeting, the longest one known to God. And it went on forever, but it was because it was discussing a governance report, right, that said what the Law Society should and shouldn't be doing. And it said that unless you have a really compelling reason, so he said, it was so funny, I thought it was his best moment, the consultant, he said, the problem is you're doing too good a job. There is no really compelling case for changing the Legal Profession Act. You seem to be managing self-regulation okay, there's no real big things going on, so changing it to allow some other legal services to be allowed elsewhere just isn't really in the cards, except for like an 8 to 10 year window. So if that gives you an idea of what it takes to get legislation changed, what it means is the playground places like the regulations sandbox that are currently in place with the Law Society are the only places where this stuff is going to be allowed to happen. And it's going to be for quite a while. So put your innovative hats on and think about what that might mean, because we're not getting enough applications. I don't believe we're getting the number of applications that we should be getting, considering the number of unmet needs that could be potentially considered within the realm of the sandbox concept. So I would encourage you guys, I don't care what year you're in, I would encourage you guys to really think about, is there something you want to try that you think might challenge something, provide service before you get your license? Because you guys are motivated, you've proven you're motivated. So think about that, that's all.
Yeah, I will say, actually, I want to practice in Alberta, I was very excited to hear when the Legal Innovation Sandbox was approved in Alberta, and your comments regarding the yellow zone are very encouraging, because one of the biggest sort of, as a new person coming in, as a new incoming lawyer, it's very hard to, you almost feel like you're stepping on eggshells if you try to sort of push too hard. And it's good to hear from somebody that's making these decisions that you are encouraging us to push buttons.
100%. This is the moment. Like, it's going to get tougher after this when they actually start to bring rules in about when you can what it means to foray outside the realm of the Law Society's realm. Right now it's kind of open season and a willingness to experiment.
Those are wise words, Caroline. That's really it's good advice. Well, I think we've got to the point of Zoom cocktails where we're like the people lingering in the kitchen when everyone else is gone home. So I'll just say thank you again, judges. You are so important to this, and your input is so valuable, and we really, really treasure it. So thank you. And students, I am really proud of you. That was like perfect. You rock. You're just amazing.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you very much to the judges and the attendees as well. And learned a lot from the other group as well. And thank you, Darnell, for bringing your story into this too.
Okay, I think it's time to say good night. So have a lovely Friday night and a good weekend, everybody. Congratulations.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I really love meeting you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a good weekend.
Thank you for inviting you back.
Get those beers ready, everybody.